you the proposed budget for the 22-23 school year. And our district goal is displayed on the screen in front of you to promote cost effectiveness, develop and manage a budget that provides a quality education in a fiscally responsible manner. So goals of this year's budgeting process: to maintain quality programs across the district, support educational programs and services vital to successful implementation of our district goals, meet the needs of all students and staff, socially, emotionally, and culturally, while providing access and inclusivity for all to achieve equity, meet safety and security needs across the district, including all applicable mandated health, safety, and legal requirements, keep our tax levy within the property tax cap calculation, and to also identify alternative funding sources and cost-saving measures. Specifically, this budget reflects what we have received in state aid. It also includes retirement salary savings for our staff members who are retiring, the use of reserve funds, unfunded mandates, special education costs, the continuation of the lottery-based UPK program, kindergarten program, additional staffing, a middle school counselor, elementary speech teacher, a groundsman, maintenance mechanic, a high school student's record clerk, and a high school social worker. In addition, we have put into our budget some of the federal funds to maintain intervention services across the district, ESL services, enrichment, and social worker positions that we added in previous years. So Frank's going to come up and talk a little bit about the proposed budget.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. So just a little comparison from the current year budget to the proposed budget. Current year, we're at $91,602,093. Proposed $94,767,083, an increase a little over $3.1 million, or 3.45%. Revenues $48,763,000, $51,671,000 proposed, $2.9 million increase, which is 5.96%. Majority of that is coming to us in state aid. Our foundation aid is about $2.5 million higher than it was the prior year, which is good. So by next year, if the state continues with their promise of an additional $2.4 million to get us fully funded on our foundation aid, we should be, you'll see a slide a little bit later, closer to 50% of our revenue coming from the state, which is by law where it should be. Appropriated fund balance, that's the savings money that we use to balance our budget, is actually down $821,000. So the reason that is down is a couple of years ago, when we thought things were getting very critical, and they were, and then they turned overnight and became very positive. We had reduced our sales tax budget. Our sales tax budget went down about $800,000, and we used the savings account to hold the gap on it so that the taxpayers did not have to pay that shortfall. Well, unfortunately, I should say, unfortunately from a budget standpoint, the state aid has been very high. The last 2 years, spending has been enormous, as we all know. A lot of people have been spending money. Our sales tax has been coming in well over budget. With a recession on the horizon, potentially, it could change. But we felt the need, because the sales tax is so high, is to increase that sales tax back to pre-COVID numbers, if you will, which is about 3.9 million. An increase of about 800 on sales tax. Therefore, we lowered the savings that we originally applied to balance that. The tax levy is what balances our budget. So the current year tax levy is $38,979,000. It's the total amount of money that we receive from all taxpayers in our county with four towns. Proposed, we're looking at $40,051,051, an increase of a little over $1 million, or 2.75%. And I will point out that our tax cap for next year is 4.32, so we're under our tax cap. So we have to, by law, break up our budget down into three components: program, capital, and administrative. So on the program for 21-22, we're at 71.92%, which is where we want to put the majority of our money. Obviously, that's why we're here, is to educate kids. That's going up a little bit to 72.27. Capital is down a little, 16.83% to 16.38. And then administrative is up slightly from 11.25 to 11.35. And that total dollars break up the three-part budget of our district, three-part components of our district. So where does the money come from to pay for our budget? Well, As I just said a little earlier, state aid is up, so we're at 48.71%. That's how much that 46,156,290 of state aid equals of our total revenue side of the budget. In prior years, that number was down around 45, 46%, and taxes, the tax levy was close to that number, 45. So as the state aid is going up, 48%, hopefully next year we get closer to 50%, you'll see the taxes are dropping in percentage-wise. So the proposed number of 40,051,051 in the tax levy is a total tax levy, a part of the budget is 42.26%. Sales tax is up a little from prior years, as I said, with the increase in that budget. So now that makes up 4.12% of our total revenue budget. Savings accounts, we're still applying 3.21% of our savings towards the budget. And that's something that we have to worry about, because going forward, if you continue paying your bills with savings, eventually your savings will run out. So at that point, then you have to generate new revenues, and in our case, that would be taxes, or you reduce expenditures. So using your savings is something that we want to keep an eye on. That's why we did lower it this year as well, to try to get it to a more manageable number going forward. So future budgets will be looking at that very closely. On other revenues, $1.6 million, that adds up to 1.7% of the total budget. And then all of these added together, $94,760,783, that is our total expenditure budget, 100%. So just to put this in perspective, what we're projecting the tax rates to be based on a tax levy increase of 2.75. And this year's a little bit more challenging because each town has a different equalization rate than 100%. In the past, we've always had 100% for each of our towns, and just Riga would be the one town that every couple of years would drop below that 100%. Well, this year we have 3 towns that are below 100%. So in the case of Riga, their tax rate for this year is $22.44. We're projecting that to be $20.09 for next year, or a decrease of $2.35. Likewise with Ogden, you see it's an increase. Ogden is the only one that's increasing, and that's with their equalization rate dropping as low as 82%. What the equalization rate really means, it's a number that's set by the state of New York. But what it means is if your house is assessed at $100,000 and your town is at 82%, it means your house is not valued at $100,000. To be equal to the other towns, it should be valued at a higher number than that. So it's actually like $82,000. And that, again, is based on, the reason for these numbers being so far off is because of how sales have been recently. Like I said, in the past, we've always had 100% for 3 of our towns. But this year it's a little bit more challenging. Chi-Lag would go from 2019, $20.19 to $20.09, a decrease of 10 cents. And Sweden would be a decrease of $1.09. In the long run, each town will pay the same amount of money. For instance, if you look at the actual tax for 21-22, they're all paying $2,019. If you look at the estimated, they'll all be paying $1,828 per 100,000. So obviously, if your house is worth $200, you would double those numbers. That would be a reduction of $191. How you get that number is, in the case of Riga, you would take a $100,000 home, and 91% is $91,000. With their tax rate being 20.09, you would take 91,000 divided by 1,000 times 20.09 equals 1828. So the more thousands you have to work with, the lesser the tax rate has to be. The less thousands you have, the higher the tax rate is. Because in the long run, they all pay the same. Now, when these rates go back to 100, you'll see a complete reversal. And hopefully the assessors will get them all back to 100 within the next year or 2. That's the goal. Contingent budget. So, should this budget be defeated, the Board of Education has 2 choices for the next year's budget. They can go immediately to a contingent budget, or we can have a revote. If you have a revote, which would be in June, the budget could be the same numbers that we proposed at the first budget, or they could be modified. If that vote is defeated, we have to go contingent. And basically, if you go contingent, the new rules are tax levy cannot go up $1. Whatever it was last year, it has to stay the same. So that increase that you see, a little over $1 million, with 2.75% would have to be zero. So we would have to come up with that $1 million reduction, whether it's from expenses or using additional savings. The expenses that we would cut would be, we don't have them specifically labeled here, but we would have to expend, potentially reduce expenses, potentially $831,248 to get to that contingent number. Fortunately, our district has been extremely supportive over the years, but we need to point this out should this become a reality on May 17th when the vote is held. Okay, Lori.
So the first proposition is the proposed budget for the 22-23 school year at $94,760,783. The second proposition is to authorize the district to purchase 7 66-passenger buses and 1 30-passenger bus at an estimated maximum cost of $1,265,936. Proposition 3 is to authorize the district to create a $15 million capital reserve fund known as the 2022 Capital Reserve Fund. And Frank's going to share a little information about that.
So with the capital reserve funds that we've had over the years, we have done a lot of work in our district. If you've been in Churchville for the last 10 years or so, I would hope you've seen a significant change in the appearance of our facilities, both in and outside. And with the most recent approval of the middle school renovation and land development, $60-some-odd million project, you'll see even more development with the work that we'll do in this building and then the work that we're going to be doing outside in the new land. That has all been completed with no additional taxes being raised to pay for those bills. And that has been the case because we've utilized capital reserve funds. So what is a capital reserve fund? At the end of a school year, if we have more than 4% available of our budget, 4% of the next year's money, we have to put that money into a reserve fund. Or you can reduce taxes. What we have done is we put that money into reserve funds, and that has allowed us to use that money to pay for these capital projects that we've done. We've done well over $100 million over the last 10 years. Be it roofs throughout this campus and each of the elementary, remote elementary schools, and numerous renovations, the most obvious ones being the CPAC, which was the first big item, and more recently the pool, and the entire renovation to the high school, which I'm proud to say today still looks as good as it did when we first completed that project, which is awesome. And that's a feather in the cap to our O&M staff, and more importantly, the kids. And the kids are taking care of the facility. So, you know, the belief is that if the facility looks good, people take care of it. If it looks run down, people will continue to run it down. So we're out there fixing things as soon as they happen, because stuff happens. We have a lot of people here, a lot of kids, and we try to repair them the best we can. But the bottom line, to get back with the capital reserve, this has done so much for our district, and I would hope everyone would agree in this room that our facilities are second to no one. Put them up against any facilities in this county, and we can even look to the state. You know, we've gone around and looked at different facilities, and that's how we come up with our plans, and our facilities are top notch. And these capital reserves is what's made that happen.
And then for the 22-23 Board of Education, we have the following 6 candidates as shown in order on the ballot. So first, Thomas Albano. Second, Kathy Dillon. Third, Steve Hogan. Fourth, Kevin Johnson. Fifth, Ashley Renz. And sixth, Michelle Alloway. So there are 3 open seats, each for a 3-year term, and we're going to hear from our candidates in just a little bit. Voter qualifications. So in order to vote, you must be a U.S. citizen, at least 18 years of age, and a resident of the Churchville-Chili Central School District for at least 30 days prior to the vote. And as mentioned before, the vote is scheduled for Tuesday, May 17th from noon till 9 in the middle school north cafeteria, 31. And so with that, we will open the floor to see if there are any questions.
I can, but
Mr. Strickle?
They wanted to be able to retire in their home and afford it. We've got this inflationary thing going on here, and the houses have gone up in value. And you know, I said, well, your equalization rate, your house is worth more than you pay. The reality is I built my house 22 years ago. I want to be able to retire and want to die in it. I put a lot into it. I have family food in there and everything else. So the reality is we have to be cautious for this board that, yeah, there's equalization rates and everything else. But, you know, my house will be sold in the state before me because I can't afford the state. That's what happens with the tax rates. Building this budget, just have to be kind of, and there's going to be years the state's not going to give money away. But I remember them coming in and always stuck with me, so I hope you can remember that. Then my last commentary is, thank you. I had to get my last question in your comment, so thank you for all your service. I had the first question in your first year, and now we get the last one.
Thank you, Tom, I appreciate
I
it.
appreciate you very much.
Thank you. You know, one thing I will point out, since you brought up tax rates, I think we should show this. I remember 19 years ago, we always used to be in the middle when you look at the highest rate at the top and the bottom being lowest of the counties, the schools in the county. You know, obviously the lowest is going to be Russian Red with all the businesses that they have. We were always in the middle, maybe a little bit towards the top of it. Well, now we're towards the bottom third. So our tax rate actually is less than where it was, which is good. And we are preparing for the future because you can't expect the state to do what they've done over the last year or two. And so we have to plan for the future, and we're never doing 1 year at a time. We're always looking for multiple years. So, but I appreciate your comments, and actually I started with you on the board too. So, thank you.
Candidate forum, and I'd like to ask Mary Torcello to come to the stage to chair the candidate forum for us. Thanks, Mary.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to invite the candidates to come to the stage and sit in the order in which you appear on the ballot. And while they're doing that, I'd like to share with the audience that the process to determine order is a random draw and in no way reflects who may be the best or least candidate for the board. The procedure we will follow for tonight is that I will first introduce all of the candidates, asking them to stand briefly while their name is called, and then I will go back to each candidate and allow them to address the audience to share a little bit about themselves and why they are running for the position on the Board of Education. After each candidate has had the opportunity to do so, we will open the floor to questions, and the questions will be alternated between pre-submitted questions from the website and if anybody has any questions here, both online and in person. The questions must be applicable to all 6 candidates, and they will be screened for their appropriateness. In addition, questions similar in topic will be consolidated. Please be aware that all candidates will be given the opportunity to answer all questions regardless of whether the questions were asked of a specific candidate. For this reason, we are asking all candidates to keep your responses brief so we can answer as many questions as we possibly can. We have allotted 40 minutes this evening for this forum portion of the meeting. And when we reach the 40-minute mark, regardless of which candidate is answering the question, all candidates will be permitted to answer that question, okay? So this year, as Lori mentioned, we have 3 three-year board member terms open and 6 candidates running for these 3 positions. In the Churchville-Chili district, candidates run at large, which means the 3 candidates with the most number of votes will fill the 3-year terms. When they turned in their petition, each candidate also turned in answers to the same set of questions, Their responses will be printed in the District Link newsletter as well as the Suburban News, and have also been made available on the district website, located on the Business Department webpage under the Budget Development tab, so if you're looking for that. So I'm now going to introduce each of the candidates and ask them to stand momentarily, and then I'll go back to each one of you, allowing you to address the audience. So first, in order of the ballot, we have Thomas Albano. You'll just wave and stand, okay? Next we have Kathy Dillon. Next we have Steve Hogan, then Kevin Johnson, Ashley Renz, and Michelle Alloy. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to go back and allow each of you to briefly share a little bit about yourself. So Thomas, we'll start with you. You can, whatever you're comfortable, as long, it might be easier because I don't know if the mic will catch you. You might need to sit.
Thank you for having me as a candidate for Churchville-Chili School District. A little bit about my background. My children had the education system of Churchville-Chili, and they came out beautiful. I have grandchildren in the Churchville-Chili School District now, and I want to become involved and to understand what the curriculum is for their education and for their social well-being. My background, I grew up in a very ethnic community, Ninth Order, City Catholic League, City Catholic education. Graduated from Jefferson High School, attended MCC, and received my peace officer training and degree. Became an officer at the Ogden Police Department as a part-time peace officer to the rank of sergeant. Became internationally recognized as the bike patrol trainer of the International Police Mountain Bike Association, community policing. It was very heartwarming and fulfilling. But as a part-timer, I also have another career in my graduate of electrostatics, electrical engineering from RIT. Became a group leader and lab head for Eastman Kodak Company in commercial government systems. I became an electrostatics engineer. I became an elected board of director for the ESD Association, 2-year terms. Also involved in a lot of aerospace activity. I still hold a top secret compartmented secret establishment, and 2 more years of that. I worked on very exciting programs such as the X-ray telescope Chandra and also the James Webb Space Telescope that you probably can look on Facebook and see what amazing things will be occurring from that. 15 years as a Churchville-Chili or Chili Soccer Association coach, director, tournament chair, supporter of the Chili Fire Department. My wife Corinda and I live on Davis Road, and we're both retired, so I have some time to spend with focused opportunities of this organization. That's about it. Any questions?
We'll do questions based on this, so thank you, Thomas. Kathy?
Hi, my name is Kathy Dillon. I've been a resident in Churchville-Chili my entire adult life. We have 2 daughters who are graduates of Churchville-Chili, and I also have 2 grandchildren that attend Chestnut Ridge. And it's really nice to be back in the elementary school after raising our children here, and then to see our adult children decide to move back into the district and raise their children here is, to me, it's just the best. I'm currently the board vice president for the Churchville-Chili Board of Education, and it's really important for me to continue the work that we've got a number of projects we're working on, and I really want the opportunity to continue to do that work. I'm a retired social worker by training.
Excuse me, can you pull the mic closer to you?
Sure.
Thank you.
Usually I've been told it's hospital. I'm retired director of quality assurance for the Finger Lakes Developmental Disability Service Office and spent almost 40 years working in the field of developmental disabilities, which brings a different focus to some of the work here at the school district. In my past, I've been a Girl Scout leader, faith formation teacher, soccer coach, so I'm a lifelong volunteer in our school district. and I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to continue to serve our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Steve?
Hello, I'm Steve Hogan. I've been on the school board for about 7 years. My wife, Joy Hogan, and I, we've been residents of Chili all of our marriage, and for me and her, we both graduated from Churchville-Chili schools quite some time back. We have 4 daughters in the district, 11th grade, 10th grade, 8th grade, and 6th grade, and honestly we feel very blessed to be part of this district. We've had really good experiences. We've been, gone through Fairbanks Road School, middle school. We have 2 in middle school, 2 in high school, and it's really been a great experience on all levels. So I bring a business background to this as well. So I work for a consulting company, national consulting company. I'm a president-elect for the Rochester Small Business Council. I've served as a pastor in the Chili area of Encounter Church, or previously known as New Hope Community Church, where we stepped in for a period of 5 years voluntarily to help financially stabilize it, get it to a good place, and we turned that over in 2020. So we've been involved in that for many years. I'm still a financial trustee. I've been on the Finance and Audit Committee for the district pretty much, I think, since I started here. That's very important to me, the full financial stability, and questions that were raised tonight along those lines. So I hope to continue serving in this capacity. We have a good thing going, and we want to keep that in motion. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Steve. Kevin?
Yes, my name is Kevin Johnson. My wife Stephanie and I chose to build in the school district 18 years ago. We now have 2 children in the district. I have a 10th grader and a 7th grader. I come from a family that puts priority on education. My father was a college professor. My brothers, myself and my sister all have college educations. I do have one brother that chose not to. He chose to become a plumber. He may have been the smartest one of all of us. I'm not running on a specific position. I have for years considered joining the Board of Education or running for the Board of Education. I'm looking forward to learning things. I consider myself to be pretty level-headed and to be able to see things and situations from all different angles and sides. And that's why I'm here, and hopefully I get to spend some time on the Board of Education.
Thank you, Kevin. Ashley?
Hello, I'm Ashley Renz. I probably don't need the microphone because I'm a pretty loud person to begin with. I have lived in the district for 4 years. My husband and I specifically moved to Churchville to raise our daughter within the district. She is a 2nd grader at Fairbanks. So we have about the next 10 years invested in the district. I am a registered nurse who was fired in November for refusing the COVID vaccine. I have 7 years in labor and delivery and 5 years in pediatrics prior to that. So children are my life. It's something I'm very passionate about. I'm prepared to fight in the event that parents are forced to choose between vaccinating their child and sending them to school. And I also think it's very important to empower parents to become more involved in their child's education. And I'm going to say, based on the attendance here tonight, that's something that we probably need. I was definitely expecting more attendees here. So I think that it's very important to get involved in your child's education so you know what's going on with them at school. You're handing your most precious item to strangers, essentially. So I think that it's very important to be involved in your child's education.
Thank you, Ashley. Michelle?
My name is Michelle Aloy. My husband and I have been residents in the district for 9 years. We have 3 students, 3 of our children that are students in the district. We have an 8th grader, a 5th grader, and also a 1st grader. I've also been thinking about running for the board for a while. And really, to what Ashley said, part of the reason is I do feel really passionate about getting more involved. Getting more involved within our students' education.
I really want to have the opportunity to contribute to ensuring they have the resources and the best environment to be successful, both the students and the teachers. I feel really passionate about that. I've been a volunteer in the community as a coach for Odyssey of the Mind for 7 years. I've coached soccer and basketball for several years as well. Our kids are involved in a lot of activities. I also bring a business background as well. I've been working as a consultant in the food industry for 17 years. I've been in our international division for 7 years, and I lead a pretty diverse team that's based across the world. So I have a lot of experience in working on a team, on a high-performing team. I do hiring, budgeting, and have a lot of experience in providing solutions and listening to clients. So I think I can bring that to the board as well. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. We're going to start with our first pre-submitted question. We'll start with you, Thomas, to answer first. And here's the question. Are you familiar with the culturally responsive sustaining education framework developed by the New York State Board of Regents? And do you support the implementation of this framework in the Churchville-Chili schools?
Okay. Yeah, I actually downloaded that information from the school district database. I have concerns with any mandate that comes down from NISEC that isn't thoroughly analyzed and voted on by the constituents or parents of the administration or in the organization of the area. I have reviewed some of the data. It doesn't identify age-appropriate implementation. I'm concerned with indoctrination without representation of those curricula. So I need to understand more. I need to research more of this. But basically, I'm concerned with indoctrination, social bullying by an organization in Albany that's not appropriate for the age groups or not appropriate for our students' family values, which should be accomplished at home.
Okay, thank you. Kathy?
When we get information from the State Education Department, we get a curriculum that is then written by our teachers at a local level, implemented at a local level. So although the oversight and the overarching information comes to us from state education, which is our regulatory body, it's up to us locally to implement it in a way that's age appropriate for each of our students, and I think that's absolutely the right way to go.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Steve?
Yeah, I think I am familiar with that. I think it's important that every student is treated fairly and respectfully, and every student has that right. So that is part of the target of that framework. I don't support more mandates coming from Albany that are trying to enforce that and broaden that spirit in a different direction. I'm uncomfortable with that. I'd like to have parental choice and more of those types of discussions. But as far as children being treated fairly, regardless of culture, race, or whatever, every student should be treated fairly and respectfully.
Thank you. Kevin?
So, probably not the right answer, but I have not been familiar with the paperwork that we're talking about.
Okay. Ashley?
I am also not familiar with that.
Okay. Michelle?
Same, I am not familiar with that.
Okay. All right, we'll move to question number 2 then. And this time we'll start with Kathy. All right. What has been your volunteer involvement for the Churchville-Chili district within the last year?
Within the last year, I've served as vice president for the Board of Education. I'm also past president of the Monroe County School Boards Association. I also represent the school district on the BOCES Board of Education, and I'm a regular attendee of the Labor Relations and the Negotiating Committee at Monroe County School Boards Association. So I'm very heavily involved in many things that pertain to our school district, because there's so many issues right now. They're so important, and it's really important that we provide good advocacy, and we get trained and we understand the current topics, and those venues allow us to, for promotion, professional development, allow us to be on top of kind of cutting edge of what's happening for our children, so we can provide them the best education.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
As I mentioned earlier, I've been on the Finance and Audit Committee for almost 7 years. So we have regular meetings where we review audit reports, obviously for fiscal responsibility and integrity to ensure that in the district. We've done a great job, our team here with that. So I've been part of that. I'm also part of POSH, which is Parents of Senior High, and that is on the board liaison or rep to the high school. So I'm part of those meetings. We're very, very active in that group as well. And then I have numerous commitments with 4 children where we are attending, like many up here, events all the time. And I have nephews and family members and all over that we are in and out of the schools watching plays, sporting events on a nightly basis.
Kevin?
So I have, actually, unfortunately, the Odyssey of Blind program is no longer being participated in the district. I'm saddened by that. I was a coach for that. I coached it for 4 years, 3 different years. I took teams to the state competition, which was wonderful and fun. I have volunteered with the youth football program. I've coached on junior state football program. I have been a volunteer coach, assistant coach in the Churchville Soccer or the Churchville Soccer Association. I've worked with many of the kids in the wrestling program, in the PB wrestling program, and I look forward to continue those things. I have two very active children. I'm in the school buildings almost every day throughout the sports seasons, and I'm here 5 or 6 times a day to pick up, drop off, and bring students to practices and back and forth.
Okay, thank you. Ashley?
So I don't really have any volunteer experience within the district. My daughter is a 2nd grader, and her entire school career has been during COVID, where there hasn't been a lot of opportunities. And as far as I can tell, there hasn't been an abundance of communication from the elementary school on parental opportunities for volunteering. So that is something that I would like to get more involved in. But as of now, I don't really have anything.
Thank you, Ashley. Michelle?
In the last year, I volunteered as a youth soccer and basketball coach. And like many others, I've got 3 kids who are involved in multiple sports and tons of activities. So I volunteer as a chauffeur to a lot of practices. I think some of the parents here can attest to that. So we're very active in the district.
Okay, thank you. Thomas?
Well, historically, I've been involved in a lot of the Churchville-Chili Saints football activities with my sons. And my daughter was a Jefferson Award winner in her curriculum while attending Churchville-Chili. I do have 2 grandchildren now in the Churchville-Chili school district, and to become more involved in their activities and their learnings.
Okay, great. Before we go on to the next 2, I'll turn to the audience. Does anybody have a question they would like to ask? No? All right, go ahead on to, you do?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can you all tell us how many times you've been to the Board of Education meetings, how involved you've been, or if you've ever spoken in front of the BOE during the last 2 years, during COVID and shutdowns and whatnot?
All right, and we would start with Steve, since it's going down the line.
So I have to check my attendance, but I'm pretty sure I've been at every board meeting. It's been quite a busy couple of years.
Actually, I have been to 3 board meetings recently, because part of my process of considering running for the Board of Education was I wanted to see what is going on and see how the things work. I have actually had the privilege of the floor. I had a concern that I wanted to present to the board. I did it a couple weeks ago because I did not want anybody to feel like I was running for the Board of Education based on the concerns that I brought forward to the board 2 weeks ago.
I have never spoken before the board. I've been to 1 meeting and I watched one that was streamed on YouTube.
Michelle?
Yes, and I have not attended a board meeting, but I have seen a stream board meeting on social media.
Yeah, I attended the 2 board meetings of recent. We just built 3 years ago in the area. I was out of the area for a while prior to my 15 years in the district. So it's a couple meetings.
Okay.
I've been to many board meetings for a few years. I haven't been there.
Okay, all right. Let's head on to the next question, and this one will start with you, Kevin. With all the controversy surrounding parents and school boards, do you feel parents have an adequate say in curriculum for their children, or do you feel this is a matter that should be left for the school board to decide solely?
Well, of course, parents have to have choice in what their children are being taught in schools. I feel like a lot of the chaos that has come to board meetings in the recent past, not necessarily in Churchville, but around the country, is actually kind of part of why I'm running, was because I want to make sure that there are adequate candidates out there who are level-headed, even-tempered, and able to assess situations from all the different angles.
Okay, Ashley?
So I don't believe that the board should have sole say in anything. I believe that the board should be the bridge between the parents and the state and help enable some sort of medium between the two. That way the parents get their input and then we can balance that between what the state is required.
Yeah, I feel very similar to Ashley in that sense, that I do feel that the board is there to be a good steward of the community. It's really important to listen to what the parents and the community feels and really be that bridge, because I think we talked about that on that initiative earlier, that tailoring it to the local community and the local students is really important. So I agree with that as well.
Okay, Thomas?
Yeah, I think the curriculum should be transparent. Concerns with core competency and CRS should be transparent as to what the actual teachings are, and so there's not opinions or any certain teacher opinions or advocacy for any type of social indoctrination. Fundamental education should be appropriate as we all experienced. And diversity is, of course, not only a requirement, but an essential thing that should happen. However, the cultural part of it, to understand the misnomers of what happened in the past, or what's being pronounced now with politics, of course, shouldn't be in the classroom. Again, I stress that family values should be taught.
Okay, thank you. Kathy?
Our curriculum oversight comes from the State Education Department, and we're given a framework which is then, written by our teachers. We spend a lot of time and effort on curriculum development, and curriculum development should be age appropriate, it should be fair and balanced, and people should have a clear understanding of what their child is being taught, and of course, people, if they have a problem with that or concern with that, they should definitely bring that forward so it can be addressed.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
Yeah, Kathy's right. A lot of that is decided through New York State. We do have input into certain aspects of it. We get to approve textbooks at times during the board meetings, so there are opportunities to review. But it is carried out at the local level, and that's something that we work with the teachers on. We monitor if something comes forward that's a concern. It can be looked at, investigated, and worked on to clarify. But it is something that's actively monitored. I just think it's also important to understand that the board does not decide curriculum. It is a New York State thing. We get a chance to tailor and to work with it within that context, and that it is an active process.
Okay, thank you. So we have another question. We're going to start with you this time, Ashley. And hang on, let me put my glasses on. At the beginning of this school year, prior to receiving direction from the state regarding masking, there was discussion on the board making the decision to implement masking policies. In the case no direction was given by the state of New York, Should the board have made the decision for the whole district to mask, or should this have fallen into a parental choice?
I am 100% pro it being parent choice. I do not think the state has the right to enforce masking to those who do not want to be masked. If you want to wear a mask, if you want to get the vaccine, by all means, go ahead, that is your choice. I do not believe that you should be forced to do so against your will. I believe that the district could have at least opened up a survey to parents to gauge whether there was X amount of parents who wanted their children to be in masks, or whether there were X amount of parents who did not want their children to be masked. That was not done. So 100%, I do not believe that the board should have made that decision.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Michelle?
I understand that the board has to follow the New York State mandates, but given a mandate is not issued, I would always vote for choice.
Okay, thank you. Thomas?
Yeah, freedom of choice. Engineering data. The COVID pandemic virus itself is a 0.01 micron bacteria. The mask only, even the NPR masks, only protect 0.1. So the science is there, and it's been publicized and politicized. I believe the First Amendment, the freedom of choice, so masks don't work. Okay. There might be some compromising for people with medical conditions or older aged individuals, but masking, especially for children, has been detrimental and traumatizing for our children, especially at younger ages.
Okay, thank you. Kathy?
Having served on the board through the entire COVID crisis, I can tell you that those were some of the most difficult discussions and some of the most difficult decisions that we've had to make. And when we first found out about the pandemic and it first hit us and everything was locked down, we had to continually be abreast of all the changes, all the mandates. It was very clear that we were getting mandates from the State Department of Health, the County Department of Health, and the State Education Department. Sometimes they conflicted, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they were clear and sometimes they were not. And it took a lot of time and effort on all of our parts and the part of our administration to sort through the volumes of information. When we first started, everybody said you had to wear a mask. The science has since proven that isn't as effective as we thought it was in the beginning. So it's not a one decision. We've had to evolve through time with every single challenge that we were faced with. And I understand people want a parent choice. I would speak for the board and say, we as a board, for most of us, agree that parents should have a choice in that. But when you're a Board of Education member and we have mandates from all these different entities and we have fiscal responsibility to all that, it's a very hard decision to say. It's easy to say parent choice, but then if we get fined or we lose our funding, we cannot put our district in any kind of fiscal jeopardy because we're not following the mandates that were given to us. So we changed a lot as we progressed through this transition, and people worked very, very hard to be as liberating as possible for our children, because we all felt that having our children back in school and being with their teachers, getting their education was the most important thing. But we had to balance all those mandates with our fiscal fiduciary responsibility, and it was probably some of the most difficult conversations that we had during this entire pandemic. And I could talk about it for hours, about all the whys and wherefores, and all the different issues that we've been faced with. So I would say as a board, we worked very hard to try and do the very best for our children and for our parents, and to keep everybody safe and healthy, but to provide them with an education as best as we could deliver under very difficult circumstances.
Thank you, Kathy. Steve?
Yeah, also, I was part of that too over the last 2 years, of working through that, looking at all of those different challenges. I mean, just one of the unique ones you don't think of is if kid was not wearing a mask, they, God forbid, died, our insurance policies here, what would happen? You know, I mean, those were uncharted waters of issues that we hadn't really faced as a board and that we had to adapt to within the district. And, you know, so teachers felt safe and protected, students felt safe. I can say personally as a parent, I have 4 kids here, we didn't really want to see them wearing masks. So, I mean, so choice, had it been an option at those times, I mean, we all probably on the board would have opted to, you know, remove the mask, go to school, do your normal thing. We all want normalcy. So I am a big proponent of personal or parental choice where it is possible. It just wasn't in some of those mandates, and I think we're all glad that we're through that. I mean, I'm very proud of our district and the fact that as soon as the mandate was lifted, we were ready to go. We were on the ball. You know, we adjusted immediately. Last year during the reopening, same thing. We were able to reopen and bring back in-person school. Lori and the team, and they even went beyond it, brought 7th and 8th grade back too, and a lot of districts didn't do that. So we had very good reopening plans. We were prepared, and I'm proud of that aspect of it. But it was challenging for families, for parents, for teachers. It was a very difficult issue.
Thank you. Kevin?
So I have to say first, I'm glad I didn't have to make those decisions. Thank you guys for your hard work, and I'm sure you lost sleep over it. My belief would be that if there were no mandates in place from the state, that parents should have a choice. There are children with anxiety who the masks were causing huge problems for. You know, we don't know every single situation in every single home. However, once there are the state mandates, as you saw the financial presentation earlier, I believe the number was 48.7% of our funding comes from the state. So unless everybody wants to pay twice the taxes, I'm pretty sure we need to conform with the state mandates, and it's not necessarily a choice at this level. When it is a choice at this level, I would absolutely have said, you know what, it should be the parental decision. But the situation they were in, with it being mandated and on the edge of losing half of your budget, I guess they did the right thing.
Okay, thank you. That's all of our pre-submitted. Is there another question from the floor? Is anybody? Yes, go ahead.
If an experimental vaccine is mandated by the state, who will stand up for our kids and say, we don't want your money?
Me. Michelle, we'll have you go first, please.
So again, I would certainly consider, you know, all of the information. Obviously, I know we have to consider mandates. You know, certainly my first priority is the health of, you know, our students and the well-being of our students. So all of that has to be taken into consideration before I would say I would stand up against it or not.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
I didn't hear the question.
Nicole, did you want to repeat it?
Something about vaccines?
If the state mandates vaccines, which are experimental, for our kids, my kid, will you stand up and say, keep your money and keep your vaccine?
So did you hear it?
Well, yeah, I think I can get that.
Okay.
Okay.
You want to move the microphone? Thank you.
Yeah, this pandemic was caused by this COVID-19 situation whereby a vaccine had to be produced, right, to guard against it. However, all of us that are vaccinated and boosted, why are we still getting the COVID? Okay, so there really isn't any protection, so to speak, with becoming vaccinated. And there's no data that's being publicized of natural immunity, is there? So with that, I would not have my children vaccinated because there's no long-term research as to what the side effects would be. There are some side effects known for little boys, some heart trauma, but there's no science there's no data from science that's been identified with long-term effects of this vaccine, even for older people as well. So, yeah, I don't believe in the mandates for vaccination. And again, freedom of choice. Okay, this is a situation we're dealing with now, with politicizing of this vaccine and the mandates.
Thank you, Tom. Kathy?
I'm sorry, this might be an unpopular answer, but I don't believe the Board of Education has any say in whether or not a child is vaccinated for school. The Department of Health rules who gets a vaccine. We don't weigh in on mumps, rubella, pneumonia. Any of the vaccines that our kids routinely have to have in order to enter school have nothing to do with the Board of Education. And I don't think as a board member, it's our role to say whether or not a child should be vaccinated for any disease. It doesn't matter what the disease is. It's not our role as a board member. You get your vaccinations, you come to school, it's been like that forever. And I'm not a medical person. I don't have the ability or the science to know what's best for our children, and that Department of Health makes those decisions, and that's not the role of a Board of Education member.
Thank you, Kathy. Steve?
Yeah, I agree. That is not our role. We're community service volunteers. We're not medical professionals. My wife is a nurse practitioner, pediatric, but she's not on the school board. I learn a lot from her on this. Personally, I would like to see parental choice in whoever decides that. I don't know that we'll get that option. It's a New York State decision. I think, honestly, I tell people all the time, get to the ballot box and vote in and out who you want and who's going to represent you. But that's not necessarily the role of what we're here to do.
Thank you, Steve. Kevin?
Ultimately, if it were on the Board of Education, which clearly it's not, and when I first heard the question, I thought to myself, is that even something that is in the realm of the Board of Education to actually weigh in on? And clearly it's not. I would support choice. I will say that I am vaccinated, and my children are vaccinated, but that does not mean that I feel like I should be able to tell somebody else that their child has to have it. So my answer is I would be for personal choice.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Ashley?
I 100% would fight vaccine mandates. As a nurse, I was bullied, threatened, and harassed because I made a medical decision that I thought was best for myself and my family. I absolutely do not want to see parents have to go through the same thing. If they decide they want their child vaccinated, that's fine. If you decide you don't want your children vaccinated, you should be able to do so. I do not want to see parents have to choose between sending their child for a quality education or their bodies and their health.
All right, thank you very much, Ashley. That's all we have time for tonight, so I want to thank all of the candidates for coming out tonight. Thank you very much, and I wish you all good luck. And that's it for Cheryl. I'm going to turn it over to you.
That concludes our candidate forum. We will now move to the Board of Education room. We will be having our regular business meeting.